What if we talk now about career growth? I know it's a big part of who you are and what you bring to the table with your experience is something you're passionate about as well. Talk to me about what that looks like as a leader. What is it like to help individuals move into different roles across the business, and this being one of them? But how do you put yourself in that bucket to help people, and what do you do particularly in for yourself to make sure that you're able to kind of ferret out those people that might have that might have the aptitude, right? And you want to grow those people into a great career. So tell me about how do you do that? I know you're passionate about it, so I know you're gonna, yeah,
The first thing is I've realized that what a lot of particularly junior people or, in their first or second role don't
yeah,
know.
yeah,
So things that you and I see on a daily basis, just, having run multiple businesses and we have
yeah.
access to, different conversations that our teams don't see. So I'm very, very adamant about just oversharing with my team all the things that I see that are going on.
Over
And I
communicate.
don't
Yeah,
always, yeah, over communicate. I don't always know what's going to be of interest to somebody. So if, hey, I had this conversation with our executive team last week, we talked about all these things. Somebody might raise their hand
mm,
and say, "Oh, that's cool. Tell me more about that." Right.
yeah,
And sometimes people will be comfortable doing that in a team environment. Sometimes not. So, we talk about these things on one-on-ones. But I try to spray a lot of information to my team about things that are going on and just make them aware of things going on in the business. So oftentimes, like, they might go to our job board and see some other leader posted a job about a thing. It might be too late at that point. Like, I should be
yeah,
sharing
yeah,
the information. Hey, we're going to invest in this part of the business.
yeah.
I know that you're really good at this or that thing. What are you thinking about doing next? Um, and I think part of our job as leaders is to take on the pain of managing someone into another part of the business, right? So if I can help somebody grow, and I've done this multiple times in the last year, I'd rather have great talent stay in the business, continue to contribute. We're all shareholders. I want I want the best talent to be here, and just because it's not part of my org, okay, like, I'll go backfill that role. That's my job.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate, making those connections. So we as leaders need to make sure that we have good relationships across the other leaders in the org, so that they reach to me when they have an opportunity, first before they necessarily, go somewhere else. And then we need to be sharing that information, down to our teams and across teams
Yeah.
to let them know, and think through things. So I recently moved somebody from a support role into the education role, and we explored a lot of different things that she might have done, things that she didn't even know existed. Like, right, I
Yeah.
didn't know that was a thing that we did or a role that
Yeah.
that we could
Yeah.
do. So, sharing our experience, not only in the current org, but everything that we've done in the past. Like, hey, let's just sit down and talk about it. And a lot of those things happen in one-on-ones or over
Yeah.
lunch or whatever. So
Right.
I've had a lot of really good conversations. When we have like our all company retreat, we get together and just kind of shoot the breeze, outside of, a formal environment where
Yeah.
some people just don't, even in a tight knit team like I have, some people aren't going to share, some of their necessarily desires or whatever. So, having those one-on-ones is really good.
I think what you say, you want to write this down if you're listening. I think what I got out of that whole section really was that leaders need to communicate with each other as well. We talk about leaders over communicating with those under their charge, or communicating up, but leaders don't necessarily communicate across and talk to each other. And what do you need? What are some of the skill sets? Do I have anybody in my team that can help you? And is that skill set something that will help them further their career? I think leaders need to also go sideways. And we tend not to do that. We tend to, we tend to go up and down, but not across. And I think that's a really good tidbit to write down. Anybody listening to that, I think as a leader, it'd be really good practice for you to talk to the other leaders about what they need, what's coming up, what is get exposure to some things that you may not know about, and that's for your team to put your team at a different level and to give your team something as well. It's a great way to serve as a leader. So I
Yeah.
love that. I love, yeah,
And I learned that directly from Scott Howard when I worked with him at Splunk when we went together to
yeah,
Cubel. That was the first thing we did. Hey, let's set
yeah,
up our cross-functional
yeah.
regular sync, right,
It's
on a
awesome.
monthly or whatever basis it is. Tell me what you're working on. Tell me how I can help, and I'll do the same. Right?
And then for the individual, right? I know you've got some clear guidelines, guidance for the individual looking as well. I always say be an advocate for yourself. I would be known to say all the time, if you need my skill set for anything in the future, please call me. I live a growth mindset, and I'm always looking to do something out of my comfort zone. And it's amazing how many opportunities came to me with that one opportunity to say that. And you've got to be willing to kind of put yourself out there and be an advocate for yourself. But
Yep.
you also have some great advice too, I know, for individuals in this space that are looking to up their game or do something different or be challenged in a different way. What are some of the things you tell them?
Yeah. So, again, kind of goes back to the recruiting the right mindset for the right culture of the company and the phase and whatever. But I think universally those people have to be curious and they have to
Yeah.
take some initiative, right?
Yeah.
So I can come and share as much as I can share, but I'm not going to hit everything that might be of interest to somebody. Have questions, ask your boss.
Right. Right.
That's what one-on-ones are for. And ICs need to manage up well, like understand your boss's motivation. Like what am I being compensated for? What are my initiatives? What are my directives?
Yeah.
Um, I think we do a good job of that. We've changed this in the last year and a half to really push from the top down. Hey, here's what the board is expecting from us, and here's how every team is contributing to that.
Mm.
And so I can push that down as much as I want, but I need ICs to come back and say, well, here's what I want to do. Can I go do some of these sorts of other things? I'm trying right now to make sure that I'm managing just capacity, especially with our support org. Support org can just be churning through tickets and it can be monotonous. Make sure that everybody has a little bit of bandwidth to go, explore other interests, do other things.
Sure.
And as I see this, you have to take advantage of that. Like go do something that
Mm.
is interesting outside of your maybe day-to-day activity, but that can help you develop, but also contribute back to the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Makes total sense.
yeah, and then just ask for help, right? So my one-on-ones are I usually come with like, hey, I need a couple things from you, but for the most part, you tell me what we're here to talk about this week,
Yeah.
right? And that's part of managing up, right? I need to come with here's what I need, but also what can I do to help, right?
I want to ask you a few other questions like lessons learned, right? So I know you've got some interesting lessons learned for the listeners, in the fails. We talked about a little bit about the fails, but what are some of the lessons learned you want to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, especially so for me, it's like we've talked quite a bit about right fit for phase of business,
Yeah.
maturity of products. So as you move from role to role or to org, I've definitely kind of brought in some historical knowledge that didn't
Yep.
fit at the right time in the right place. So I
Yeah.
think if you're making a move, so if you're the leader listening to this and you're thinking about making a move, do the assessment. You can assess so much before you maybe join an org, but go sit in the chair for a quarter or two and
Yeah.
really absorb what's going on.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of the things we talked about will maybe resonate, and some of them won't, and you'll need new ideas. So I think that this is definitely not a one size fits all, even though I think the function has matured a lot in the last 10
Yep.
years. There's
Yeah.
still variation, and you can't plug in one model that works somewhere necessarily into someplace else. So that's something really, really important. Yeah. And then I think recruiting, developing is our job as leaders. So continuously work on those skills, have conversations, and think a little outside the box
Yeah.
on where you might use talent and help people grow into roles that aren't necessarily just kind of an obvious path.
I think, yeah, when lessons really, it's one size does not fit all. We know that, and you really have to be aware of the industry that you're in. That's kind of a given, and some people just kind of take that for granted, or they just skip over that, and that's where they get in troubles. So I love that. I love those lessons learned. And all right, now let's switch gears again and put on your manager hat. As I know you've seen what works well and the skills, and help teach other foundational areas. Do these individuals need acumen, right? They've got to get it right. How do they develop that further, right? What are some of the key acumen that you need to teach as a leader of customer success?
Um, that's there's a lot to that, right? So a big part of it is us learning how to identify the right talent. So to your
Mm,
point, what is the right mindset for a CS in your
yeah.
org?
Right. Right.
So don't go and hire or even recruit super really technical CSMs in a very mature organization where that's a separate function, right? So recruiting the right people into the right place is, and getting that right mix. And like I said earlier, so some CS teams will I've worked with a lot of kind of maybe younger, more junior CS org individuals who come in and they're part of the sales org and they're helping grow and expand accounts, and they see the sales reps, making commission or whatever, and like, hey, I want some of that. Like, okay, I'm going to
Everybody
cut your
wants some of
salary in
that.
half, right?
Yeah.
Because that it doesn't
Yeah.
just work that you get the big salary plus the huge bonuses, right? So everybody kind of needs to understand. So I've done a lot of education of just how comp plans work and how
Yeah.
structures of orgs work and the different roles. So that's a thing to think about that maybe not everybody does. Um, but yeah, we hire on our side a lot of like puzzle solvers and problem solvers.
Oh,
So like,
puzzle solvers.
do you
Okay.
do puzzles as as an activity? That's a very good indicator for us. Like you would be a good fit on some of our very technical kind of,
Huh.
particularly our support organization. CS as
Tell me
well, I
more.
think
Tell
is
me more
from.
about that. What does that mean?
So particularly in our support organization, our technical support is not super technical. It's like there's no coding, there's no back end, but you need to understand the very complex nature of our product.
Okay.
So you can build logic into our product. How does that
Yeah.
affect different parts of how you're running your clinical trial?
Okay.
So do you have the mindset to go in and just say, hey, I'm not just clicking buttons and I get the thing on the
Yeah.
other end. There's a lot of complexity into how you even got to the point of why you're trying to build this logic into a particular workflow. So yeah, like I don't know, if you do Sudoku or crosswords,
Yeah.
as an activity, like that's interestingly kind of an indicator to us. Oh, you like to solve problems. Like you
Yeah.
literally do that on your time.
Oh, that's cool.
And then on top of that, obviously the acumen to speak well with customers and then translate some of that stuff, usually via email, which is kind of hard to do,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
into what a customer can consume and understand, and solve their problem. So.
Yeah. It makes sense. I love that. Fantastic. What about roles that sort of feed other roles in the company? You do a lot of work with career development, as I did as well as a leader, making sure that you're always on top of the people under your charge and what's next for them in their career and how can they get to the next level. So what roles are good feeders for other roles? Like I don't know, you start in support. Where do you go from there? Or what are some of the really cool kind of progressions that you've seen that are kind of natural?
So I mentioned like CSM to sales leader. I have one example of that in my head, like where that works really, really well. So he actually went from like a technical SA to a technical CSM to actually being a salesperson. So that can
Hmm.
happen. It can it literally any path can happen based on what are of interest. Yes, support. I've hired a lot of support people, particularly in the last couple of years. It's an entry level role. It's expected to be, something that you learn the business, you learn the product, and you move on to
Yeah.
other things.
Yeah.
So that's a good jumping off for a lot of different things. Usually not kind of more the commercial side, but implementation. So solutions consultants, if they're very come from a technical background, documentation and education is a place that those often go. Um, Also think about being a support leader, so you can make a
Mm.
career out of support.
Yeah.
Um, Often there's only one or two of those roles in an org, so that means as a leader, I'm probably developing somebody to leave the organization if they're going to go be a support manager,
Yeah. Yeah.
unless all the stars align and maybe there's an opportunity within the org. But that's the career path that a lot of support people don't really think of. It's like, oh, I could have my boss's job somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's a good point.
yeah, yeah. So uh, it can go a lot of different ways. And again, as leaders, I think that's our job to understand, to work with people to say, what interests you? What do you like or not like about the current job? Educate them about other parts of the org and help move them in whatever way. But yeah, I see on the support side, they tend to be more technical sort of
Yeah.
mindsets.
Yeah.
Again, problem solvers.
Yeah.
Um,
Puzzles.
Sometimes problem solving works really, really well in, sales, right? Solving problems to get a
Yeah.
deal across the line. that's
Yeah.
a problem solving or kind of
Roadblock solving. Yeah. Roadblocks. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, it's a lot of us thinking outside the box, and again having those connections still when opportunities come up. A million things have to happen for a person who has an interest in a thing and an organization having a
Yeah.
role
Yeah.
at the right time.
Timing and
So
everything. Yeah.
yeah, you're going to have 9 misses and maybe 1 hit, but we've got to keep trying. So
Sure. Sure. That makes total sense. I appreciate that. I know everybody's listening to these things. This is really good. I'm sure they're writing this stuff down. I mean, this is important because, they're trying to find their way through their career, and we see it all the time. And there's so many articles being written about it now. Is where do I go from here? What's my next move on the chessboard, if you will? And
right.
people struggle with that, right? Every day. I struggled with it in my career. It's like, where do I go next? Where do I go? What's the next shiny object in my career? Right? That's really important. So we talk about what they need or what they have as a DNA and the responsibility in the organization. So what are the key roles of a real good, outstanding, customer success function? What are they responsible for? You talked a little bit about them, but narrow them down for me. What is the overarching responsibility of a customer success person?
Yeah. So at an org level, think
Yeah.
about what do we all need to get customers successful? And again, depends on structure of the product and customers, but start with some sort of education / enablement / documentation, right? So
Yeah.
be it e-learning and self-help and videos to like, I can go dig into the community documentation and teach myself, to onboarding training, that's what like I said, when I did that in the very early stages of Medrio, I was in a conference room for a week with my customer, hand holding them while we did stuff. So you've got to get customers to whatever level of proficiency they need to be to continue down the path, right? Tech support is a common function.
Yeah.
So I've run a lot of tech support teams. Is largely what I do today. So getting customers help post implementation with solving problems.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of overlap between solving a problem versus a how-to, which is really education that bleeds in.
Yep.
We talk a little bit about like the expert consultative service. So that might be a CSM, or it might be like a solutions architect or an SA or SM sort of team doing that. But the really deep dive, solving bigger problems. And that sometimes that's just consultative stuff. Often it's a PS function. It's actually paid for engagement sort of services. So there's a mix of what that looks like. And then certainly in bigger organizations, there's the overarching customer success manager function that, like I said before, kind of brokers all of that. Sometimes they can be, the expert on site. Sometimes they're brokering that. I've found that in some orgs, if it's strictly just a quarterback role, there's not really doing anything. They're just kind of a project manager. That's not a good fit usually. They need to have, I wouldn't say like a stake in the game, but they need to own a big chunk of like the account strategy and plan and understanding the business. So it's more than just, hey, customer said they need X, I need to go find somebody to solve that problem for them. They're solving 50% of the problems on their own and then bringing in resources as necessary. So I think it's kind of those 4 big chunks. And then they can take lots of different forms and different levels based on, again, complexity of product and other things.
And the maturity of the company, right?
Yeah.
One of the things you said was a strong customer-first culture. It was instilled by the founder, Mike, and I get that because I've been fortunate enough to have things instilled in me by great founders and great CEOs. I get that. I get what you mean. Can you tell the listeners, like, what are the top 3 things that come to your mind when you're talking about a customer-first culture? There's a customer first language and, you're great. You can get up and you can go see the customer if you need to. What does it mean about, I want to double click on the culture part of that. Where does that come into play and how do you see that manifest?
A lot of it comes from products, and I've worked, I think, for great product companies, and I've worked for not so great product companies, and there's just no getting past it. And so it starts there in one way. Like, are we building what customers need, not necessarily what's flashy or, okay, AI is cool. I have to, tell leadership or tell the market that we're doing AI,
Right.
but are we solving a problem? So I think a lot of it starts with that, and then that just permeates into every job in the org, right? So if I'm a CSM coming to, am I just trying to sell something to my customer and push, or am I actually trying to help them solve the problem?
Yeah.
So they invested in us, they bought us. Are they using us? Like, why not? Like, help people get, or help the customer get to, the value realization. And I think, and we can talk about this more later, but I think that's kind of what the role of CS is evolving into, is
Yeah.
optimization, and not just, hey, are you a customer? Are you happy? But are you really doing the best you can do?
Yeah. I mean, is the customer better for having met you? Right.
Right. Yeah, that's
I
a
mean,
good point. Yeah.
that's how I looked at it all the time. It's like, look, are they going to be better off because they met me and my company and the product I represent, or are they going to be struggling? And that's success. And better in many ways. Better that they serve. Can they serve their customers better? Can they serve their community better? Their shareholders and stock, whatever they've got to share. Right. So the reality is that's where customer success really drives the value. Not just onboarding the product, as you said, that is one function, but it goes well beyond that when you're talking about what is the value, and I always say massive value, that you're bringing to the table on a regular basis every time that you sit down and meet with that customer. So
Right.
yeah, that's really about the culture of customer success, and I've had some really good opportunities to sit down with some organizations in customer success like you have, that are really focused on the customer's value and what are they doing, and looking for the next, not opportunity for yet a deal, the opportunity to bring value to the company. And, the deal sort of follows, right?
Sure.
I have a saying, I say it all the time. It's a natural progression to where the next opportunity exists. And if you do customer success correctly, then that's it. That's exactly what happens. It's a natural thing. Both sides come to the table and say, we're ready for the next one. And, because we're getting value. So I love that point you made. So what recommendations do you have for leaders? As a leader, like what are some of the things that leaders can do to keep an eye on that and to make sure that, the people under their charge are getting what they need, right? And
Yeah.
getting a leg up, right?
Yeah. So I think a lot of it at that level is network and connectivity,
Yeah.
both within your org, like we talked about.
Yeah.
So are you having regular connections with your peers and, their bosses, to know what else is going on in the org? So maybe there's opportunity there for you, but also just learning about stuff. So we've kind of got a big AI initiative. How are we going to use AI? How are we going to adopt this? I don't know a ton about it. So I'm trying to figure out, although I own the support org, which is where I think one of the very low hanging fruits of like customer self-help, how do we
Yeah.
get information? So I'm kind of tackling that. And one of the things I'm doing is I'm going outside to look for help. Like, I need somebody who's done this before.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
lucky to have great support from my management. They're helping me with outside resources. So those are things. What resources do you have at your disposal to go learn new things, connect into new technology, new networks, whatever? Utilize that as much as you can to cover blind spots, right?
Makes sense.
I have a great coach who we have a lot of similarities. She's fantastic, but have the same sort of blind spots. So I needed help elsewhere, right? So I need to
Yeah.
go find
Yeah.
help somewhere else. So I
Yeah.
think that's important. Yeah. And then thinking about how, with your team, how does that all fit together with the different sets of skill?
I wanted to dive deep into sort of how we develop those customer success teams, and how did you get so well? First, yeah, that's a great question. How did you get so passionate about this? I mean, this is sort of, a lot of people are passionate about the deal, closing the deal, and the sort of the mechanics of the deal, the finances of the deal, right? And I don't hear a lot of people say, "Hey, I'm really excited about the customer success team." What is it that kind of drives you on that, and what lights you up about the customer success team?
Yeah, I've never been that like deal driven sort of mentality.
Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of those, but so it really started from a place of necessity. So
Mm.
when we were 5 people at Medrio in the early days, 6, 7, 10 people,
Yep.
If something needs to get done, you just kind of have to raise your hand and get it done, right?
Sure.
So
Sure.
intentionally, I moved out of engineering and into uh, going into Medrio. I told Mike, hey, I'll help you build the product, but I want to do something later. So we intentionally kind of moved in, knew that I was going to move into other things. So I took over product. But then as we had customers, we got our product to market, like somebody had to go do all the things that customers need. So I was the help desk. Like my phone was what you got when you called the help
Oh
desk.
gosh, yeah.
Um,
Hello, it's
you know,
me. Yeah.
yeah. So built, onboarding, built documentation, built supports, built consulting services, and really, I think got the bug partly because Mike Novotny, the founder, just came from a product role and was very much set the tone and set the mentality of customers first in all ways. We had a rule. You can be in any meeting. You can be in front of the board. I could be in a meeting. Customer needed something. You can just get up and walk out of the room, right? So very much a customer culture. And then in the first probably 3 to 4 years of the company, the first couple of years of us actually having customers, I was on a plane every other week sitting in front of customers and doing the onboarding. So that was a really fascinating education of watching customers try and learn your product, understanding their needs. So really kind of digging into like, what are we doing here? We're trying to solve customer problems,
Yeah.
right? So at the time I was
Yeah.
running products, so I brought a lot of that back to the product team. But kind of built a practice around how do we get customers what they need. And particularly in life sciences, that can be hard because
Yeah.
your engineers, your support reps, they don't know how running a clinical trial works.
Sure.
It's not like supporting, maybe Splunk where you can get in and learn how to build things.
Yeah.
You can't just go out and run a clinical trial and figure that out. So there was a
Right.
lot of just kind of bridging that gap between what the industry needs and what we need to do internally. And just that was a really interesting time when CS was kind of nascent and figuring itself out. Like nobody in the industry kind of knew what this role should be.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think we're in a very different place today.
Oh, yeah.
But I got to work with, things like people like Gainsight, where they were doing a lot of kind of thought leadership at the time. So
Sure.
that really kind of got me into being excited about what is this going to evolve to be.
So I want to talk about also the DNA of a CS person. We don't really talk about that a lot. We talk about what they do and how they do it and why they do it, and that's all great. But what kind of individual thrives in a CS environment? What's the DNA that they need to have?
It's a good question. So, yeah, no, it's great. I've done a lot, especially, Splunk also some of these big engagements where we had very tight teams of a sales leader, a technical leader, and a CIS. And there was a lot of overlap, and you different
Yeah.
teams would have, different personalities in those different roles would bring different things to the table.
Sure.
I would say the sales side is probably most consistent. Like the sellers are good sellers, have a lot of similar traits. CSMs tend to kind of be, and I found when I started with very earlier stage companies, you hire a very technical CSM because they're playing all the roles, right? They're doing the
Yeah, they have to,
hands-on
yeah.
technical stuff. But as that org matures, then those become more like the strategic advisors that use other resources.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on where you are in your your maturity of both your org and your product.
That's
How
fair.
technical do you need
Yeah.
somebody in that role? But it really comes down to every one of my top-notch performers come with a mindset of I'm an advisor. I'm not a seller. I'm helping you solve problems. I'm understanding the business, and have a bit of that sales bent as opposed to just I'm on the back end. I'm not trying to sell anything. We're all trying to make everybody successful, and if
Right.
we are, then we all get paid, right?
Right.
So
It's natural, right? Like I said.
Yeah. But it definitely the profile evolves over the time of the maturity of the organization, right?
Yeah.
So if you're at SAP, it looks very different than if you're at a 20-person startup trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But yeah, it's much more that consultative mindset. So I probably haven't seen a ton of like CSMs going into pure sales roles. I've had that happen and be successful, but more often moving into maybe practice management or technical implementation sort of roles and things like that, where they're doing more maybe direct revenue sort of delivery sorts of things.
Yeah.
But also the CS career path, I think in the last 5 to 10 years has really kind of blossomed. And so there's lots of opportunities to be, a CS leader, regional leader, those sorts of things. So, yeah, I think that has become more of a traditional path now, like to the degree that we can have something traditional in a 10-year journey. But yeah, so it goes back to, I think, again, a lot about stage and where
Yeah.
you are and what your
Yeah,
needs
and the
are as a
mindset
business.
changes. The mindset
Yeah.
does change through. Yeah, right. I get it. So let's talk about when it goes wrong. What have you seen out there where, when does it not work? What are some of the horror stories that you've seen?
Probably the biggest is that misalignment between a sale and
Yeah.
a handoff slash
Yeah.
longer term journey.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Um, Bart and I can tell some horror stories on some of these for sure.
And we all have
Um,
those. Yeah.
yeah. Um, but I think that's a lot of what Scalibri is trying to tackle is like, hey, let's start at the very, very beginning and let's
Yeah.
not get to a sale where we're going to set ourselves up for failure.
Right.
Um, but and even when that happens, sometimes, and I'm dealing with this with a current customer, and I've done it many times in the past. There's still that whoever bought on the customer side kind of throws it over the fence, and now we've got a bunch of new teams who weren't part of the maybe the pre-sales process. So we as sellers can do everything on our end to make sure everybody's aligned and got the team, whatever. But customers don't always necessarily do that, right?
Yeah.
So I've had situations where, okay, implementation phase, and the customers just don't understand what they've been handed or why are we doing this or what
Yeah.
was the plan. So in that case, a lot of times it's, hey, we go and grab the C-level or the VP on the customer side and bring in that person on our side and say, hey, there's something going on here that we're not all in sync. We need help with your team. Who's the right people? How can we hold them accountable? Who's responsible for it? Here's the plan. We've laid out the plan and we're not
Yeah.
getting the help that we need. So a lot of times the executive level conversations, the VP who made the purchasing decision throws it over and they assume that it's being taken care of. Sometimes they don't know what's not happening or what's
Sure.
going wrong, right?
Sure.
So it's our responsibility to bring that up because we can't deliver if we don't have partners on the customer side executing on the plan, right?
Yeah, so it sounds like it's a communication issue, right? So we've got to over communicate on both sides. We've got to make sure that we're authentic and that we're transparent, right? Those
And
are
alignment.
key.
You'll hear
Yeah,
the
alignment.
word alignment from Bart a ton, right? So
Yeah.
we can do it on our side, but it has to be on the customer side as well, right?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of JourneyCast from Scalibrium. I'm your host, Rob Swymer. With me today is the incomparable Jeff Johnson. Jeff, how are you, man?
I'm good. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. So we know each other, but I wanted to make sure that you get to introduce yourself to our listeners. I'm excited. We're going to collaborate today. You've got more than 25 years. You've been working in the enterprise software space, all kinds of industries, right, including financial services, big data, like I came from with Splunk, and even life sciences. So if you don't mind, just give the listeners sort of a flavor for who you are, where you came from, and what lights you up.
Yeah. So I actually started back as an engineer. So started
Oh,
to date myself in the Y2K
oh
days working
gosh.
on that problem.
Yeah.
So did that for a number of years. And then in 2006, had the opportunity to kind of help start a company called Medrio. And so did that as an engineer. And then as you do when you build a company, took on a lot of different roles. I kind of branched out and got to go work with Splunk and do some things outside of life sciences, which I was super excited about. That's where I got to work with Bart for a while.
Yeah.
But followed some of the Splunk guys to some various other roles where I did kind of global and senior leadership around most things post-sales, so customer success, support, education, community, those sorts of things. 2022 came back to Medrio. So this is our 20th year in business. So it's a super exciting year for us. And I currently run our support, education, and kind of expert services functions globally.
Wonderful. No, we've sort of crossed our paths here in our career, and it's been, it's good to see you again. And I know you were part of the Splunk journey. But look, we're going to talk today, one of my favorite subjects, customer success. And, It's one of those sometimes customers, companies get it wrong by putting that kind of as a, "Oh, by the way, we have to have customer success," and they don't really have a way to hand it off. There's a lot of clunkiness there I've seen in my career that and I wanna dive down on how these companies that are doing it right are really leading the game, leading the charge. And you've been part of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I want to, yeah, right. And I sort of want to, make sure the listeners understand lessons learned from, the not so good, but also what separates the good to great and the great to, as I always say, outstanding, which is the next level. You mentioned AI, but what other trends are you looking at now in the customer success world? I mean, AI, is evolving for sure, and it's here to stay, and we have to coexist with that and leverage it to our advantage. But what other trends in AI? What other trends are you seeing in that business?
Yeah, I think going back to what I said earlier, go back 10 or 12 years, things were changing very, very rapidly. I think we've kind of landed on a place where you've got a couple of different models. I see a lot of what like Gainsight puts out. They put Nick, their CEO, puts out a lot of really interesting, kind of thought leadership. And it seems like there's kind of a couple of different sort of models of how you structure like true CS from what are they comped on? What are their actual roles and responsibilities? Sometimes they're renewals, sometimes they're, the advisor role. So I think we've kind of trended into a place where there's now a few kind of cookie cutter-ish models that you can pick from. And again, so much of it is maturity and size of the org, how much technical acumen you need to be that role in based on your product and your customers.
Yeah.
And then the big one that we're hearing a ton on is how are we using AI technology to, either, we're all about reducing risk, making money, or cutting costs. Like, so how do we put those into one of those three buckets? So right now I'm really focused on that. Maybe we have a ton of knowledge about our customers and our product, but it's not easily accessible to either us or our customers to solve problems for them.
Yeah.
So can we use AI tools to do that? We're exploring that.
But I think we have to be careful too, as we explore this whole AI thing and sort of where that value is, and we know there's value. But ultimately, I every day, wherever I am, speaking or doing these kinds of things, it's business is a human game, and it's always going to be a human game. And boy, customer success couldn't be, more in the wheelhouse of a human connection. You've got to build that human connection of trust and that they come to you as a trusted advisor.
Yeah.
But you have to build that trust with the customer, because otherwise it's not a natural progression to where the next opportunity exists. It's forced in there, and no
Right.
one has any fun doing that.
Well, and that's where that's a really good point. That's where I think, we're thinking of this very low, the bottom level,
Yeah.
easiest problems to solve, right?
Right.
Customers generally want to just go ask a question and have it answered. Like if it's something simple, right? That's not the same conversation that you're having with the CSM when you're talking about strategic plan for the business, right?
Right. Right.
But if I just want to go and say, hey, I don't understand how this button works, like tell me that. I don't want to have to interact with the human necessarily to do that.
Exactly.
It was great. This is several years old, but TSIA had a really good analysis. They had done some stuff, and it was when you want to survey their customers or with their members, 1,200 organizations or whatever. When you want help with something, like what method do you want to go get help? And like opening a support ticket was like the 8th thing down the list. They would rather go to YouTube than have a support interaction. So now we're getting some tools that will help us do that. But to your point, it should be that lower layer of low-hanging fruit. There are places where human conversations are by far the most effective ways. So you don't want to just throw technology at a problem.
Right.
Because
it's never going to go away.
It's the sexy thing in the business, right?
Let's flip the conversation. This is the best part. So, what is the customer success charter What is it? What's it responsible for? We know kind of what we think we know about customer success, but what is it really responsible for?
I think this has evolved over time, but I think at least in enterprise software, enterprise space, and it certainly probably differs for consumer kind of facing products, which I don't have a ton of experience in. I think it really comes down to adoption and
Yeah.
retention / expansion.
Yeah.
But realizing that value. So adoption can mean a lot of different things for different customers. So at Splunk, it was like, how much data are you ingesting? Because that's what we got paid on. But ultimately, what are you doing with that, right? What's the value, right? So I think every customer kind of goes like, or every enterprise software, you're selling some sort of product to solve a problem. So how well are we solving the problem, and how well are you using that? And I think that has gone, to your point, beyond just, are you using it? Are you
Yeah.
using it appropriately? Are you using it the best way?
Right.
So we've created an solution optimization function at Medrio, which is really, our customers like us, they use us, they know how the product works, but are they really doing the best they can do? Do they have a best practice? Do they have structure around in the organization to know how to use the product, build practice around it. And that's kind of a common thing over all my previous roles. Like, if you're really adopting us, we're a core part of the business, not just, are you using us the best way possible? And then, to your point earlier, then that leads to retention, expansion, new opportunities. So that's where I think CS kind of lives. And CS isn't necessarily responsible, or at least the CSM function isn't necessarily responsible for doing all of those things, right?
Right.
Identifying, helping customers understand, and having those high-level conversations that then you corral resources into actually solving problems with technical help or technical support or consulting or whatever those things are.
Sure.
So it's a mindset around, I'm partnered with my customer to really understand their business and help them understand all the intricacies of a complex product, and then make sure that we're kind of aligned to that. We did a really good job of that at OutSystems, and Bart led a lot of that. Was like, why are we selling this before we even get there? Like, why are we solving a problem for them? Do they have a problem that we can solve? And then what does that look like 2 years after the sale? And CS kind of brokers that journey.
So any final advice that is going to stick with them here as they're writing down their notes?
Don't be afraid to think outside the box a little bit, right? So I've hired, the last TSM I hired, my tech support person I hired was a barista prior to coming on board.
Wow. Wow.
So, but he has a technical background. So
Yeah.
customer-facing skills, technical background, he's been a rock star. So
Wow.
don't
That's
just
so
look
cool.
at like, hey, this guy has been, or person has been doing this same job for a similar company, or maybe in a different industry or whatever. Give people a chance to prove themselves.
Ask if they like to solve puzzles.
That's right.
I love that.
Or sit down and do a Sudoku with them. Yeah.
I wrote that down, man. That's awesome. And I love that those little things really do matter. And, and when we hire salespeople, we have the same kind of thing. We're looking for certain traits, right? And I love that. So, Jeff, thanks for your time. I know you're a busy guy, and I couldn't thank you enough for spreading some of this knowledge, especially when it comes to customer success. One of the most valuable parts of the ecosystem, or the family, if you will, of bringing massive value to a customer and creating a natural progression to where the next opportunity exists. And I think the customer success team has the most stake in doing that. These salespeople can close the deal. Obviously, they can structure the deal and they can build value for the deal. But the customer success team, in conjunction with the technical team and the sales team and support team, can really bring massive value to the customer, where, you're getting the 4x, 8x, 10x kind of deal, which means you're getting 4x, 8x, 10x kind of value. And that's the important thing, right? Because it's all about value.
And sales leaders need to embrace that. That's, we're all part of the team. We're working it all together, start to finish. It's not a handoff. It's just a transition of responsibility as you go down the line. So
great. Awesome. Thanks for your time, Jeff. This has been another episode of Scalibrium's JourneyCast. Rob Swymer, your host. Thanks for joining us. I hope you got some great tidbits from this, and we'll see you next time.